welcome to the Bluebird Box Knits. This is my little channel where I talk about all the things I've been knitting and all my knitting plans, all the things I've bought for knitting, and I'm really glad you're here. So I have a lot to talk about today. Every time I go to do a podcast, I can never find my podcasting notebook. I have a little journal that I keep just for my podcast notes, and every time I actually go to do the podcast, I can't find it. So it'll turn up sometime between now and the next podcast, and then I will lose it again before podcast 12. But I did take some notes, and it made me realize all the things that I have to talk about since the last time I talked to you, which was just a couple weeks ago. So today I'm going to go through some finished objects, my works in progress. I'm going to update you on shop news. I design knitting patterns and sell them on Ravelry and my website. So I'll tell you what's new there. I will show you all the things that I've bought or acquired since the last time I podcast, and I will talk about all my making plans, and I'm going to add a new segment to my podcast called Tell Me a Story, and I'm just going to tell you a story from the last time, between now and the last time I podcast, and maybe I'll knit while I do that. So let's start with finished objects. I actually don't have any finished objects since the last time. I've been working on submission calls, so I've been swatching for those. Unfortunately, I can't show you them. I can show you the ones that I didn't end up using, or the one I didn't end up using. This little colorwork swatch, and then the top has some slip stitch garter, which is done by, when you work it flat, it's done by knitting each row, but you slip some of the stitches and you alternate colors. Sorry if you can hear my stomach. I don't typically eat anything before noon, and so it's now 12:30 or something. So I had my first meal, and then my stomach goes a little bit crazy after I feed it. But this is the time that I have to podcast, so I hope that's not too loud and distracting. I used non-superwash wool yarns for this swatch. You probably want to see the floats. I always like to see floats. So I did the color work in the round and then just cut the strings afterwards. But this slip stitch garter I did flat. Yeah, so it wasn't exactly what the look I was going for, so I scrapped that one and did another one that I'm really happy with, but I can't show you. This rust color, I'll talk about this in acquisitions, but this rust color is Juniper Moon Farms, and this blue is Lamana something. And the Juniper Moon Farms was really, really nice to work with. I usually find Peruvian Highland wool a little bit scratchy, but this stuff is so very soft. It's unfortunate that it's not very local to Juniper Farms, but yeah, it's a really nice color, and it has quite a bit of variegation, like different colors within the yarn. So there's red and yellow, and yeah, it's really nice. I would recommend that yarn, and I would love to work with it again. So we'll move on to works in progress now. I have ripped out, actually I more so cut out the section of this garter that I did not like in the garter cardigan that I was working on. So I didn't really like how this was looking compared to the rest of the cardigan. So I snipped the string in between 2 rows and unraveled it, and then it just leaves like an entire section that if I wanted to reuse this, which I think I actually will, I think I will snip it right after the yellow, and I'll reuse this bottom portion. But I don't really like how this greeny yellow turned out, so and then I will just seam it back together using Kitchener stitch. So this is how the cardigan looks now. Yeah, so this was about where I cut it here, and I've worked on this part. So I like it to be longer than that. It's getting pretty close. I think I want the cuff to be pretty, not the cuff, the hem to be pretty long. So, and then I'm going to add that section back on. So I'm going to do this part, and then I'm going to add a speckled blue and white, and then transition into the green. So after I have this blocked, or this section done, I can figure out some of the yardage requirements for the body, and I can figure out the actual, for sure, the actual gauge, and then I can write up the pattern. So I'm hoping to get that done soon. It seems to be taking me a long time. And what was I going to say about that? Oh, thank you to everyone who made some suggestions about what I should do about the brioche. I had an idea to do brioche, big shawl collar type thing, and hem and cuffs. And lots of people were really excited about the brioche, and lots of people were not so excited. So I think I will do at least 2 options, probably a brioche option, and then some kind of a slip stitch garter, I think, like this one, where you alternate colors and work garter, and that will give sort of a similar look with 2 different colors, and it's a little bit squishier than a regular garter. And well, that's not true. It just, I don't know what I'm saying, but it would be a simpler way to get sort of a similar look. Or else I'm thinking maybe a third option would be fisherman's rib, because some people can wrap their minds around a fisherman's rib easier than a brioche, and you can do a 2-color fisherman's rib that looks nice, although I think 2 color is a little bit more complicated. Anyway, I will at least do 2 options. I just need to figure out how that works with the gauge, because I probably wouldn't want, I'm holding 2 strands double in order to make this nice color transition. I'm using 2 colors. So this, you probably can't see a difference between these 2, but one is like a speckled It's a cream color with speckles of orange and stuff, and then the other one is just white. And then I work 6 rows, and then on a wrong side row I transition to I keep one color the same, but I change one of the colors, so that's why it kind of makes this fade. And it's really fun to work. I really enjoy mixing the colors. One thing I've noticed is that it's in fading, it's more important the tone of the yarn than the color. So when I was keeping all the greens together, it was it's much more obvious, this transition, than this one, which has, say this one here, the top bit there has blue, yellow, white, pink, but it looks like a smooth transition because it's all the same almost color, like saturation. So our eye picks up contrast first, so the difference between dark and light, but if you mix colors that are sort of all the same value, even if they're completely different color families, it blends together and your eye doesn't see the change as much. So I will be writing up how to choose colors and how to organize your colors for color changes in this pattern too. So I have all my yarns for this project in this big beautiful basket. This one was purchased in Africa, so I can't tell you where to get that one. It was purchased in Kenya. And my second work in progress is a very slow one. So last time I showed you this amount of work for the Seed Star hat, and now I am this much. I need to increase my cord length, so I actually haven't even caught up to the original one yet. It's a lace weight project, so it's a slow mover, and I really need to get going on it because it's going to be a big hat that you can fold in half to wear as a triangle, so there's a lot of yarn that needs to be knit up in that one. And then the Alpenglow that I showed you last time, I haven't really worked on. I did rip it back and reknit a section, but you can't really tell the difference of what I did. It was just that my gauge was tightening up too much, so I had to go back and change needle sizes. So, and now I'm doing so many swatches and submission calls, and I have so many designs that I want to get moving that I just haven't really, that one's not much of a priority anymore. Okay, so shop news. The Carrick's Market Bag was released last week, and that was really fun. I released it, and then within 24 hours, I think someone who was not a tester had already posted a new bag on their Ravelry project page, which was pretty fun. It's a really fast project because it's worsted weight and not many stitches to knit. The northern harrier out there hunting in our pasture. So that one is done. So the sale for its release is finished now, but next week the Lennox Pullover will be coming out. So that's the one that I'm wearing here. I first showed this on my very first podcast last year. It's taken me a long time to get it released. but I'm really excited to get it done. I probably spent the most time on any design on this one because it's bottom up, compound shaping, raglan shaping, which means that you have different rates of decreases along the raglan seam, and it's also a different rate for each size so that you get the exact right yoke depth for each size. There are short rows at the shoulders in order to bring this line up. So instead of having, it's worked in the round up to this point, and then it's worked back and forth, and you bind off the neckline stitches. When you get to this point, you do some short rows, and that just pops this side of the neckline in and makes it more of a U-shaped neckline. What else? Has a double folded collar. It's worked entirely inside out, so all this reverse stockinette sections are all knitted on the inside, and then you turn it out inside out at the end to finish, and it becomes reverse stockinette. What else? There's no shaping on the sleeves, so you can use one sleeve as your swatch and just knit a section of it, block it and measure it, and that will give you your stockinette gauge. That will give you an idea of where to start picking your needles for the body, but you also should block and measure your gauge for your body texture, because it is very important in order for your yoke to be the right size. So this pattern is written by rows in the yoke, not by inches, which is often the case for a bottom-up sweater. And that means that if your row gauge is off, often people can meet stitch gauge, but row gauge is off, especially if you change yarns. You don't use a sport weight, you use a fingering weight, or if you use maybe a superwash instead of non-superwash, it can be easy to get stitch gauge, but then your row gauge can be quite a bit off. So you should really know where your row gauge is before you start the yoke. Yeah, I am really happy with mine. I knit 2 of them, and my testers seem happy with their versions, so I'll be glad to get that out into the world. And I always do a 50% off sale for every design, only for a short time. You need to be following me on Instagram or signed up for my newsletter in order to get notification of that sale and the code that you need for that. I charged a little bit more for this pattern than most of my garment patterns, just because it took so much time and effort. I also had to pay more for tech editing because it took more time and effort for my tech editor to deal with all these different numbers. So that just is to reflect the nature and the complexity of this design. But there's still a 50% off sale, so you get it for a good price if you are signed up for that and know whenabouts to get on Ravelry and get that for half price. So I guess I can talk about my acquisitions now. So for the first acquisition and most important one is that I bought a new phone. If you watched my last episode, you know that it was not a very good one. I have every technology thing of mine I bought before or right around when we had our first child. So everything is kind of aging out now. My desktop computer is old. My DSLR camera is old. My phone, I haven't bought a new phone in 10 years. I've been given some phones by generous people. So, yeah, everything is needing to be replaced right about the same time. But I was very glad to put some Bluebird Box money towards a new phone. I don't have a plan that gives me a new phone. I have a very cheap cell phone plan, but that means that when my phone does die, I need to put out a lot of money to buy a new one. So anyway, that's all that to say, we have a new phone. I have a new way to podcast because hopefully my phone will still function even though it has 40 minutes of video on it. And yeah, so that's a big one. I've also been to a lot of yarn stores since I've last talked about acquisitions. So I've been to Statement Junkie and I ordered some Chigu shorties. So I've wanted to try these for a while. They're like short needle tips, and then they come with these short cords, and so you can do sleeves. I don't knit socks. I have knit socks. I don't enjoy it. So these are really just for sleeves in the round. And then I don't have to do magic loop, which I find very slow, and it also affects my gauge. It really tightens up my gauge for sleeves. And plus then I have a whole bunch more needle tips because I'm always running out of needles. So I have used this one. I swatched with this one, and at first I wasn't quite sure, but actually I really enjoy it now. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And you can also like start the cast on of your sweater neckline with those. Yeah, it's a big investment, but if you knit as much as I do, I think it's totally worth it to buy the good stuff. So I got those from Statement Junkie in Sherwood Park, Alberta. Yeah, Andrea was out of them, but I just happened to be in the store when she was making a new order. So she was able to add a set into her order for me. And then I have been to the Yarn Divas in St. Albert. Sassy Strings was doing a pop-up shop there, and so I wanted to go and see her stuff and support her. I also needed the yarn for the border of this, so it will be it'll be a 2-color border in the brioche, but I didn't have anything dark, so I got this yarn from Tracy of Sassy Strings. This is called Blackberry, and it's in her sock yarn. And I think it will look really nice with this just seems to go with everything. So I got that, and I also needed some yarn for one of the submission calls that I'm doing, so I got these 3. This is Rama Garn. Oh, not showing. In this color is 434, and this one is 4206, and this one is 0438. So it'll be a color work design with those 3. And I also got these cool leather buttons from Yarn Divas. These are from Pearl and Hank. There's the price tag. I thought that was a really good price. There's 5 buttons in here. I'm not really sure how they're gonna work. Like if you put it on a sweater, I don't think you could wash it if they were leather. But I'm thinking maybe a bag. I have some ideas for like a messenger bag with a flap that buttons down, so that would work for that. So they're from Pearl and Hank, which is in Manitoba. So I have a story about these later. So while I was in Victoria, I went to Beehive Yarns, and that's where I got this Juniper Moon. I think it's supposed to be it's fingering weight, but you can easily, it worked well as a sport weight yarn for me. This is the tag. And this color is Cinnamon. So that's the one I used for that swatch that I talked about before, and I used this as the other color. It is color 55, and this one is just 100% merino. It was really nice to work with too. And I also got this one from La Manna also, and it is It is 40% cashmere, 40% possum, and 20% silk. And it is like a lace weight with a bit of a halo. It was really nice. So I used that one for another swatch that I can't show you. And I bought another one, this, but it's already been used up in the swatch that I have, this Sanus Garn Baby Superwash in this dark blue. And it was nice to work with. Also, I would totally make something for somebody in that. So here's a little swatch, little section that didn't work out. There's a little teaser for you. And they had lots of beautiful books and magazines. Oh, and this is another acquisition. I bought this beehive wool bag from there. And Chrissy from Yarn Divas gave me this tote bag. I love St. Albert, it says. So a couple more bags, and they have this, yeah, I bought this one from Beehive Yarns, this Making magazine, which I thought was an autumn edition, but actually it's their summer edition. But there are some really beautiful patterns in here. It's cable socks and this handbag. And I really like this little toy. I can find it. Here it is. It's a little fawn, I think. Where'd it go? No, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. He's so cute with his little I don't know if you can see his little hand in his pocket. Anyway, he's so cute. My sister-in-law asked me if I was gonna make one of these ones for my daughter, but I know that the second I make one for one kid, I'll have to make one for my other 3 kids, and I do not have time to make 4 toys. So no, but so cute. I really want to just make the overalls. Yeah, that's all my acquisitions. For plans, I hope to make the hat from this. So a couple episodes ago, I showed you this yarn from Yak Yarnery. It is the DK in I'm Canadian A. And this is the hat that I want to make. Let me find you the page that doesn't have the writing on it so that you can see it better. So it has this like bobble and cable pattern. And it is called the Pine Hat by Layla Raven. Oh, that's the person who does the knitting with string lights. Like that was the original idea, was from Layla Raven, where you can like knit a swatch of Christmas lights and plug it in. I don't know if you guys have seen that on Instagram. I'm pretty sure that's the name of that person. Yeah, it's a really nice pattern with a beautiful crown decrease, and it is, I think it's just 2/2 cables, so it shouldn't be too complicated. They used half wool, half cotton yarn. And a worsted weight, but I think with I usually like a tighter hat than is recommended for my size of head, so I think if I just do the size they recommend for my head size, it will come out as a hat that I actually want to wear in DK. And then I have some other plans for those submission calls, which I showed you the yarn for. I have another one to submit today. I wasn't going to submit to it, but the deadline was extended, so now I feel like I do have time to write something up, so I will throw something together. I don't have much hope that it will be accepted, but sometimes it feels like, well, if you can manage to do it, you should just do it. Just throw something out there in case, you never know. So I have a few different recommendations. Oh, I need my hands for this one. So this is not a podcast recommendation, but a recommendation for living. I have been obsessed with the folding methods by Effective Spaces on Instagram. She has all these different ways of folding things, of wrapping, of using folds in order to organize your life. So I've been using her folding methods to fold our laundry, which I went from never folding laundry, because every time my children go to get dressed, they pull everything out of the drawers and then just throw it back in. So nothing ever stays folded. There's just no point. But then they can't find anything. Their drawers are a mess. They don't close. My children get onto the bus at 6:45 in the morning. My 2 boys do. So there's no time in the morning for clothing drama, for not being able to find your socks, for not being able to find a t-shirt, not being able to find your sweater. Everything has to go smoothly in the morning, or else it's a complete disaster. And I don't have time to drive them to school when they miss the bus, because their school is 30 kilometers away from us and it takes half an hour to drive. So I started folding their clothes, their t-shirts, their pants, even their underwear with her methods. And now they can immediately see what's in their drawer. They don't need to take out everything in order to find something. And if they do happen to pull things out, they don't fall up. The folding doesn't fall apart because she uses these tucks. So I'm sure you're already following her because she has quite a big following, but I thought I would just let you know that it does work. It takes a lot of time to fold all the clothes this way, but in the end it saves us so much time and stress later on. So I started doing it for my sweaters too, my knitted sweaters. So they become this little bundle. So I will link her Instagram below, and you should go and follow her and find out all her tips. But basically, you fold it as you would a typical a t-shirt or sweater, like how they do in the store. They fold it in thirds to the inside. And then you fold it, you tuck it this way. This is very difficult and awkward to do like this. And then you take the top, the neckline, and you tuck it into the hemline. Like that. It's not the best example, but when you do it on a flat surface, it works a lot better. And so, yeah, I have all my sweaters in a nice little stack. I will show you the basket. There you go. Don't you just want to get dressed out of that little nice little stack? So another recommendation I have that is not a knitting podcast recommendation is sorry about that, is a radio show actually on Spotify. It's a radio show based out of Edmonton, but I think it's like, it could translate to Canada outside of Alberta and to the United States and maybe to some other parts of the world. It's called the Garner Andrews Show, and it's, as they say, it's not going to make you smarter, but they talk about stuff that's not important, but that is very important to us as people. Like, it's just them telling stories, life stories, and people calling in and telling them their stories. It doesn't really sound very exciting, but I get at least one belly laugh out of every episode. And I also love it because I don't have to censor it too much for my kids. The first 30 seconds, the intro, is the worst part of the podcast. So I usually skip through that, and then I don't have to worry too much. Sometimes I do censor it, but it's not like, there's so many comedic podcasts that are just really not good for kids. So it's nice not to have to worry about that too much. My whole family likes it, and we listen to it on road trips, and I listen to it while I'm doing the chores that I really don't like doing, like folding laundry or cleaning bathrooms, and it always helps to make that job go by faster. So it's called the Garner Andrews Show, and it's on Spotify, and yeah, I hope you get some joy out of it. Another not knitting podcast recommendation is an Instagram recommendation. So October is also known as Inktober on Instagram for people who sketch or paint, draw. So I follow someone named Robin Olsen. She's an amazing landscape artist out of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. She does mostly mountain landscapes, but she's doing Inktober, and she's doing these super tiny watercolors, like that big. So you're supposed to do one for every day in October. So yeah, there's just a couple days that she's done. So I'm not sure how much she will keep on it, but I would recommend her account no matter what. And her little tiny watercolor landscapes are super cute. So I would recommend following her in October. And then I do have some knitting podcasts. Recommendations. They all seem to be Italian podcasts. So they're not very new, but I seem to like it when things are all in a nice little neat category. So even if I've been watching it for a while, I will bring it up if it fits into the category. So the first one is Francesca from an Italian knitter. I'm sure you guys have heard of that one and watched it, but I just really enjoy the Italian accent, and she's quite funny and lighthearted, and seems to be a very prolific knitter, so I would recommend that one. And then Knit in Color is one that's a little less well known. It's Beatrice, and she doesn't have very many episodes up, but she wasn't podcasting very frequently when she started, so it might be just that she is having a break between podcast episodes. But that one I find really enjoyable also. And one that's growing really quickly is We Grow Wild. I think her name is Martina. And yeah, she has like vlogs and some cooking episodes and stuff like that, but she also has some like dedicated knitting episodes, which are very enjoyable, relaxed. They're usually longer, so I think people enjoy that. So if you're not watching that one, I would recommend it. If you have any podcast episode recommendations or channel recommendations, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. I think that's, oh yeah, and then I was going to do story time. So I was going to tell you a story about these buttons. So my mother and I went to the Yak Yarnery to Yarn Divas to see Tracy and her pop-up shop for the sassy strings, and we bought some other things, and I picked up those buttons. And so then we went over to this little coffee shop that's just around the corner and ordered some coffee and some scones, and I don't even remember what it was called. It was really nice though. It took a long time for us to get our drinks, so we were sitting there for a while. I was knitting, we were talking, and then when we finally left, it just dawned on me that the total amount I paid at Yarn Divas did not seem like enough money for how many things I got. And so I looked through my bag, the shopping bag that Chrissy gave me, and there were no buttons in there. So I looked through my knitting bag, and what do you know, there was buttons in the knitting bag. And so I looked at the receipt, and sure enough, I had not bought the buttons. I had walked out with them. And so we walked back around the corner, and Tracy and her husband and Chrissy and Sherry were still all there. Oh, actually not Sherry. And they said, what are you doing back here? And I was like, I stole buttons. I don't know how I did it. I'm sure that I had it on the counter, and I must have thought she scanned them and just picked them up and put them in my bag, but she hadn't, so I had to come back and confess to my crime and pay for them again. And while I was in Victoria, I took my knitting needles on the plane, and I always take my knitting on the plane, but I am nervous when I take my good Chiagu knitting needles on, because they're very expensive and that's a lot of money to lose if you have to have them confiscated. I probably wouldn't get on the plane, to be honest. I would just say I'm not getting on without those. But what I did was, and I didn't have a checked bag, I just had my carry-on. So I had quite a few things in my carry-on bags. I had my laptop, I had, they made me take my shoes off because I was wearing taller boots. I guess they need to see those, so I had to put those in a bucket, and then I just put my my knitting needle case right out into the bucket, and so that they could see it. And sure enough, I got called to the side and he asked me about them, and I told him what they were, and he said, oh well, I can't take the tools away from the artist, he said. He said he was a piano player, and so he understood that you couldn't separate the artist from their art. And so I said, I don't think you can take a piano on the plane, can you? Anyway, so that I had no problems getting on the plane on the way to Victoria, and then on the way home again, I could see them moving it back and forth throughout the x-ray machine to like double check, but they didn't pull me over for that time. Okay, one last story. It's another story from Victoria. So on the Monday that we were leaving, we were flying out that afternoon, there was a lot of things happening because of the Queen's funeral. The Queen's funeral in England was happening that day. So there was a lot of things in Victoria, which is the capital city of British Columbia. And so they were closing the inner harbor, closing all the roads there around the legislation grounds. So my mother-in-law and I decided to go to the Beehive yarn shop, since that was our last chance of the trip to get there. My mother-in-law, it was only about 2 kilometers from where we were staying, but my mother-in-law really struggles to get around. She has mobility issues, so we were taking a cab. So the cab made it to the hotel okay, and we got in. But as we were trying to get to the wool shop, the cab driver was really struggling to get there. And it seemed like every time he turned a corner, that road was closed. And he told us that on his way to the hotel, those roads were open. So they were closing roads basically behind us. And finally he got to a part of the downtown area there where he couldn't go any farther, and there was roads closed in front of us, there was roads closed behind us, And so he said, I can't go any farther. You'll have to walk. And we were about 800 meters at that point from the wool shop. So my mother-in-law said that she could walk that distance. So we got out and we headed up the road and left our poor taxi driver stranded. He had nowhere to go. So he didn't have to wait too long, because by the time we were done at the wool shop, most of the roads were back open. But yeah, that poor guy. And we had to hoof it the rest of the way, which was fine. It was okay. It just cut into our shopping time a bit, but no harm done. Okay, I think that's all I have today. Let me know what you think of the format of this episode, what you think of my new phone, ways to improve. I've been doing this for 11 episodes now and almost a year, and I feel like I still am trying to figure it out. And I still feel there is lots of room for improvement. So it really helps when you say what the things you liked, the things that I could improve on. And I always really appreciate your sweet, encouraging comments and your direct messages to Instagram telling me that you enjoy the podcast and I should keep going. I really struggle with where this is going and what I need, what I intend for it, the kind of thing I need it to function for in my business. I never started the podcast to make money. It was just to share my designs and to get the word out about what I do and the thought process behind my design, because lots of times I can't really communicate that in any other way. There's just not enough space in a pattern description on Ravelry or my website, and it's just not very conducive to it on Instagram. So that's why I came on here. I have not made money off YouTube, so mission accomplished. And I've been doing it for almost a year, so just be aware that those people that you think are making a lot of money on YouTube might not be, and I'm one of those, but that's never what I intended for it, so that's fine. So I'm sometimes just not sure what I do intend for it and what I need it to be and where I want it to go. So that can be unmotivating to continue on, but what is motivating is your encouragement and your reaching out and your enjoyment of it. So I hope you have a wonderful October. We are having a very late fall here. It's hard to remember that we had a late spring also. It's just like there's still green leaves in October. That's pretty crazy. Usually most of the leaves are gone by now, and we've hardly even had frost, so we still have tomatoes out there that haven't been picked, and I don't think I've ever done that into October. So yeah, I hope you're having a wonderful fall or spring or whatever you're in right now. Take care and keep on knitting. Whoa.